It's my first day in Chiang Mai. I've just been getting set up, thinking about what success looks like for me over the next few months. So I'm in a new place, new laptop, new phone, getting everything set up, and I'm just kitted, ready to go. I've got with me like a load of motorbike stuff, all brand new, to do some touring. I'm ready to just work and travel, see what's around, and it's something which I've just worked on for a long time. This position I'm in today is something which I've worked on for years, at least in a dedicated way, 6 years or 7 years, but longer than that in this direction where I wanted to go of working online, work with a laptop, travel, see the world. That was something that I wanted to do. The same principles that I've always thought would be helpful are what worked. And I'll just touch on a few. I think it's really important to be able to learn the system which we live in. You need to be able to negotiate. You need to be able to sell something. You need to be able to position something as valuable. You need to be able to get money off of people if you want to be paid. And then you need to be able to produce something which is valuable, or learn how to use tools to be able to do that. That's where I've spent a lot of time. The other thing is that there's so many things in that, not work related necessarily, but so many things which are fighting for your attention. And unless you're careful about where your attention goes, they will extract it and you'll be left with nothing. And all of the valuable things that you could have done with your attention will not be possible now, because you're not a machine and you're at the mercy of that. The other thing is just how I think about my money. From like the most foundational element of it, I'd previously been in situations where I was stealing food and spending all my money on drugs. So I've seen that other end of the spectrum where you're desperate, you do stupid things. And the reason I always mention this is not so that you feel bad for me, but it's just to illustrate that anyone can be in that situation, right? You're not special. If you're desperate, you're desperate, okay? And that looks different for different people. And the way that you get there is different. But I think the way which a lot of people end up there is through some bad habit which just spends all their money. For example, if you've got a gambling addiction or a drug addiction, there's kind of no source of income that you can get that is going to be able to beat the rate at which you can spend with those bad habits. So changing the bad habits so that you're not undoing your own progress, so that you're able to actually say, I want to do this thing, I want to work on this thing, and then be able to consistently stack and make progress. And then once you're in a situation where you're not desperate, the way that you can make decisions is different. So for example, you can decide what is best for you and then wait until that type of opportunity presents itself. Someone who's got a better opportunity isn't going to take a worse one. Okay, if I had the choice, do I work for £100 an hour or do I work for £12.50 an hour, or whatever the minimum is? Why would you wouldn't take the minimum? It's just as simple as that. So the only reason people are at the level they are is because they don't have a better opportunity. And a lot of times people actually put themselves in worse situations and leave themselves with no better opportunities. Like they ruin the better opportunities. When I became more reliable and I wasn't doing drugs, I got rid of bad habits, I wasn't desperate, but then I also wasn't like ruining opportunities that did come my way, and I was able to get something out of them and then use them as stepping stones. So that was good. But then also not having to take a bad deal. So if something came my way that didn't make sense, hey, do you want to go steal this car? We're going to split £1,000 three ways. We have to go steal this BMW. We've got this other stolen car we're going to drive there in. You know, that doesn't sound that appealing. And that's a real story of someone I know that went and did that because they needed money for drugs and got in a high-speed chase. And they managed to get away, but he said that was the most close I've come to either dying or going to jail. And then he made 330 quid. You know, that's what desperate looks like. And anyone who's got a better situation wouldn't take something like that. So getting away from being desperate is like the most important thing. And I kind of second guess myself when I talk about this, but this is actually real. This is actually the experience I've had in my life. And I'm not trying to sugarcoat it, but I'm trying to share what I think helped. And it feels weird to talk about because you can't just talk about this with anyone. Because a lot of people, they don't have that same experience. And it's unrelatable to a lot of people. But this is what people's lives are like, really. So that's a good foundation, no bad habits. And what I think changes it after that is that you're not in a short-term frame of mind. You're thinking, how can I do this thing to get to this next place so that I can then work on this next bigger thing? And your situation's just more stable. So you can keep building because you're not looking for, how do I get this month's rent? Okay, because you're not thinking like that. You're thinking, what can I do in a year? What can I do in 18 months? What's my situation going to look like in 3 to 5 years? How can I use what I've got now to build something up over the next year or so to really change my life in the next 3 years? I'm not saying that I've got it completely figured out, but that's definitely better than how are we getting money today to buy drugs? And I think that this thing is never finished. This is just a process. And I think that the more you learn and the more you change the way you act because of what you've learned, that your results do literally change. And I'm all about people sharing what they've learned to help other people to create something better for themselves. Someone was saying to me, can you help me? And I said, no, I can't help you. What can I do for you that's going to help you? Oh, and it was nothing. And it was more like, can you show me how to help myself was really the question that they were asking. And I was like, well, just look at what I'm doing. Because I can't change it all for you. There's no point in me trying to explain myself to other people. If I can just show what worked for me and you can see that how that might help you and then you do something about it, that's the only way I can help someone else. If you go and try and force your help on someone, it usually doesn't work, from my experience. That's painful, that's difficult because you've gone out of your way to go and do something for someone. It doesn't mean I wouldn't help someone physically that actually needed help. But you can see that someone has a lot of bad habits, that the way that they act is creating their situation. And I can't help you because your situation is a result of all of your bad habits. What can I do about your bad habits? Only you can do something about your bad habits. I can tell you, yes, this is the situation for you, but it's only you that can actually do it because it's your behavior on a day-to-day basis. And they were kind of like, oh, and they sounded like underwhelmed by that. And I said, but the thing is if you look at it, that means I'm not going to be able to do it then. I can't help myself. It's the almost complete opposite way that I look at it. Because your bad habits create a situation that you don't like, it basically shows that there's not some external thing that's creating this situation for you. It's you. And if you want to change it, you can change it through changing the way you act. And you change the way you act by changing the way you think. You change the way you think by what you learn, who you're around, what you consume. And fundamentally, you can improve your situation by changing your habits. And I've said this so many times that there is not really any magic that needs to happen there. You just need to stop putting hurdles in your own way because there's already so much which is going to be problems for you and things which are difficult to deal with and challenges without you doing it to yourself as well. And if you can just not do that and you can learn how to deal with the problems that do come your way and that those problems level you up because you don't hide from them, because a lot of times someone experiences a problem in their life and then they bury their head with some form of escapism that causes more problems for them. And then they're stuck in that loop. The problem with not facing the problems is that you don't learn how to solve them. Whereas when you do learn to solve them, you actually get better at solving problems and you look at problems more like a possibility to learn something. I'm going to figure this out and I'm going to improve. And then when this happens again, the time for me to solve it next time is going to be much less. It's not going to cause me as much stress because you don't stop the problems. What can I do to just completely stop the problems? there's nothing you can do. But you can change your ability to deal with the problems. And you start to see that you can do something about these issues you experience, and that they actually level you up. And we're all going to experience these problems, and you can just either decide now that you're going to be someone that learns from them and levels up from them, or you're going to be someone that hides from them and gets crippled by the problems. And I suppose that my outlook on life is just a combination of all of these things. Because over time, I've just gradually built up what I've seen works and what doesn't work, to the point where I've got a good kind of foundation of what I know in terms of information. But then today it's more a process of seeing where the gaps in it are. And I think the gaps in it for me personally have been more related to being emotional in situations rather than logical. I'm not saying don't listen to your emotions. I'm actually saying that you should listen to them more, because if you're sensitive or you've experienced childhood trauma, I actually look at those things as being possible to be like a superpower. If you're able to read situations faster, if you're able to get what you want out of situations, if you're able to turn something bad into something good, those are good skills. But a lot of times they just also come with self-sabotage. And I think a lot of the self-sabotage comes from this overactive or inability to regulate your emotions properly, which causes problems with other people, causes problems with relationships, causes problems where you want to bury your head. Okay, but when you're not doing that, and you also have these other skills, it doesn't necessarily just need to be you experienced trauma and that's why you've got those skills. Like, we've all got our own skills because of the environments we were in. The ones in those situations I'm talking about are maybe more pronounced, like they're more obvious, and they're different because the environment's different. So that software that you build up over time because of the situations you're in is the superpower if you can get it to the right environment where it thrives. And this is the way that I'm trying to approach my work, in the sense there are a number of things which I think I'm good at because I've got the data to show that I can learn something quickly or I can understand a new concept quickly. And I think now I've got a lot of foundational knowledge, which means that when I try something new, I can apply some of the same thinking to pick something up quickly. So that's just useful, especially with the work I'm doing. And I've started to think about what kind of things can I actually do to improve those skills so that they're kind of tuned to the environment that I'm in. I think they're already naturally a good combination. I don't know what the word is, but the work I do is related to websites, related to AI. So I've got to think about things, I've got to plan things, I've got to research things. I have to learn new concepts all the time. So my proclivities or inclinations are well suited to that. But then there's all these kind of mental frameworks that I think help. Like, I've got absolutely no problem being 100% wrong. Don't care. Doesn't affect my life, because it's an opportunity to, okay, if that's wrong, what's right then? And these questions which pop into my head, like, I researched. I wanted to know, how do I charge my laptop the fastest with this setup that I've got? So I was talking to Claude for about 20 minutes. I know that people normally wouldn't care enough to do that, but for whatever reason, I want to know those details. And I've got no problem leaning into these thoughts. And that's like an arbitrary one, which isn't work related, but it's just now I understand some different things about electricity regarding this setup, and why does it, for example, if I touch the body of the MacBook, it vibrates, and it's something to do with this plug. Something inside this plug, so because it's plugged in, if I touch it, I can feel this little vibration. Fine. But that little detail might mean nothing. But when it's work-related things and it's to do with websites or coding or hosting or development environments or AI, those little details all kind of stack together and it produces an advanced understanding. So I think that leaning into these inclinations which you have and being honest about what they are. And then on the flip side of that, I know, because I've learned it the hard way, that type of precision and that type of thinking which I may apply to my work doesn't apply to real life. I can't plan specific details about real life because it's more random. There's more unknowns. I've realized that with my work I can be really specific, but in life it doesn't always go to plan. There's emotions. You're a human. There's also the fact that you're perceiving it through this imperfect perception. Because in the past, I've had the opposite, if you can imagine what I mean by that, in the sense that this exactness that I try to apply to my work, I've applied that to my life and then been extremely frustrated by it. And then I've been doing work which doesn't require me to do that, and I found it really boring and unfulfilling. Recognizing these inclinations, let's call them, and it's like if you've had a traumatic experience, I think talking about it has been one of the best experiences for me to come to terms with the way that I think about things and my approach to things, because then you've got an opportunity to address it if it needs to be addressed, and recognizing the ways which serve you and the ways which don't serve you. So it's important for me to notice those kind of things and then apply them to some environment where it has this like synergistic, it just fucking works. You combine those two things and it just works well. That's a good overview of the way that I think. I didn't script this. I did a video just before this which was scripted. This is the other stuff which is in my mind at the moment. I hope that that can be helpful to someone. If you have any questions or you want to talk about this kind of thing, I'm open to it. Leave me a comment, drop me a message. Peace.